Good afternoon and welcome to today's episode of Derek's Travel Chats for February the 11th, 2021. I'm your host, Derek Winsor, owner and operator of E&B Travel Services here in St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. For anyone tuning in for the first time, this show we talk about travel and how things have changed since the pandemic and what you can expect for travel in the future. As Canadians, we all love to travel. However, we know it's important to first ensure the health and safety of all Canadians. And as a travel agent, I support the present travel restrictions, and I know that we will travel again in the future. On today's show, we're going to take a little trip down under. My guest today is originally from Australia and is now working with Goway Travel out of Toronto as the Canadian General Manager of Sales, Miss Renee Straton. Since a wee age of 6 months old, when Renee took her first vacation to Fiji, she's been bitten by the travel bug. Born in Sydney, Australia, Renee has also lived in London, the UK, beautiful city. I have been there many, many times, and spent 2 years in Western Canada before moving to Ontario, and currently in Toronto as our hometown. Renee has been in the travel industry since 2002 and has worked as various sales management roles in insurance, wholesale, retail, and the airline sector. And Renee has traveled to over 56 countries throughout Asia and South Pacific, Europe, Middle East, and the Americas. She has a passion for adventure and has done multiple overland trips through the Americas and Europe. Combined with her love for travel, Renee enjoys snowboarding, hiking, immersing herself in the new cities, and enjoying what cuisine a country has to offer. So after all that, welcome, Renee, to Derek's Travel Chats. It's a privilege to have you join the show today.
Thank you. It's absolutely my pleasure. And I get to talk about my hometown, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I have never been down under, but I just can't wait to be there. And hopefully sometime soon when all this is gone, that we can get that bucket list taken off.
Absolutely. It's definitely a lot of people's bucket list. So hopefully after today, I'll inspire a few people to head on down under.
Good. So I know you worked for Goway, and being from Australia, and Australia being one of the specialties with Goway Travel, among many other locations and destinations. But I really wanted to zero in on Australia, just to give people a taste of what they can expect. But before we get into that, just how has Australia been doing with regard to the pandemic? And I know they have some very strict border closures and so on. So if you can just let our viewers know a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Look, I think Australia is probably one of the countries in the world that's done really well when it came to the pandemic. Last year in March or April, Australia and Canada were on par with each other with their COVID-19 numbers, and Australia decided to take strict measures in place and completely shut down their borders, and so did New Zealand, and they haven't opened those borders up at all. So as a result, they are COVID free, which would be lovely to live in. I speak to my family often and they don't even know what a mask is. They've never had to wear one. So let's just say that life down under is pretty nice right now. And it'll be really exciting when those borders do open back up again.
Yeah, I know. Too many things going at one time. Yeah, no, I mean, here in Newfoundland, watching the news the last couple of days, we now have a big umbrella, I call it umbrella of cases because it's spanning so far. And, all of a sudden put us back into lockdown. We were enjoying, we were wearing masks and everything, but we were still, enjoying somewhat of a normal life. And now all of a sudden we're back in one part of the province in lockdown, and will be for the next couple of weeks for sure. So I guess it's taught us all a lesson that you still, no matter what how good it is, you still have to be very, very cautious. And I've listened to some things that the Australian government have put out, and then they are really taking uh, um, big measures to make sure that they continue to stay safe. So
Yeah, exactly. And look, they did have some cases, I won't lie, but they've been COVID free for quite some time now. And any case that has come, it's come internationally, and they've been in quarantine for 14 days. So that's how they've managed to not have that community spread, which we have here in Canada.
yeah. So I know people are really tired about hearing about COVID, even though it's extremely important, as I said at the beginning. In order for us to get back into travel, we all had to do our part, whether it's wearing masks, washing your hands, and all of those things that the protocols are asking for. But today, it's about telling people about Australia. So when we get back to that point of traveling, people have an idea of what Australia is all about and what it has to offer and the excitement of going to Australia. So I know you have a little bit of a presentation to share on the screen. So I'll let you
Absolutely.
move towards that. And then as you're going through, if there's any questions, we'll pop those at the time.
Beautiful. So what I'm going to do now is share with you my screen. So I won't be 1 second. Let me just quickly grab that. There it is, beautiful. You know, when you have all these different screens up and you have to choose which one it is. So hopefully now you'll be able to see my screen. Can you see it okay there, Derek?
Yeah, it looks wonderful. Yeah.
Wonderful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a video. This is a video that Tourism Australia put together. You may recognize the narrator when you hear him talk. But so sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Okay.
Well, it's hard to describe, but it is. You see, it's different down here. The air just has more life. Sounds touch you, and the light fills you up somehow. Yeah, it's a place that stays with you. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it stays forever. Because Australia isn't just a place you see, it's a place you feel. Seen it all before, till you found something more. Breathe it in and let it feel your heart. It's like love, and cleans your soul. Feel it in the air.
You ready to go yet?
If the plane was outside my door, I would be honest.
I just want to jump into the water. But I will tell you, Derek, one thing that people often use as a bit of a misconception is how big Australia actually is. So what I've got here is a map that shows the United States and Australia in the map. So as you can see, it's a pretty big continent there.
It is, yeah.
In fact, it's about a 5-hour flight from one side to the other, and 97% of Australians live on the coast. So you've got a lot of this land that we use, and in the middle, you've got all the desert and so forth. So what I might do is just show you this map as well, because it just gives you a bit of an idea of what I wanted to touch on today, some of the main places that people visit when they go. And I've done a little triangle here. It's kind of that we call it the Golden Triangle. They start in Sydney and they go up to Queensland so they can do the Great Barrier Reef, and then they go out to the Rock. So we call it the Reef, Rock and City. So this is a really common way for first-time travellers to go to Australia.
Okay.
So Sydney, this is my city where I was born. There's actually a picture of the beach that I used to live at. So Sydney is, look, I may be a little bit biased, but in my opinion, one of the most spectacular cities in the world because of the harbour. You've got that famous Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House there, which you can do some amazing backstage tours at the Opera House there. And that's the famous picture of Bondi Beach, which we can do surfing lessons at, which is also a fun thing to do. Now, Sydney all year round has a pretty temperament climate. So in winter, you're looking at a cold temperature of maybe 18 degrees. So not bad. Definitely a little bit warmer than Canada, that's for sure. And in the summer times, it can get quite warm. So just keep in mind they're in the opposite seasons to us. So if you do want to escape the weather, it's a great time to go in our winter.
How are they doing with the wildfires this year?
Good question. So they're going actually really well. There was some wildfires recently in Western Australia, so on the other side of the country, near Perth. That tends to be a destination that people visit more so their second time around to Australia. But on the west coast of Australia, where the majority of people visit, they haven't really had any bad wildfires to date. And the ones that occurred this time last year, everything has regrown. Nature has an amazing way of doing that. So, yeah, you wouldn't have even known it happened.
Good to hear.
So another couple of pointers I just like to talk about my city is there's a really amazing zoo, Taronga Zoo. That's in the top right-hand corner. So you actually see Sydney Harbour right behind the zoo. It's on the harbour there. Cuisine, that is my passion. I can't not mention it. But being from Newfoundland, I'm assuming that you don't mind your seafood. So Australia is known for its seafood as well. And we have some incredible walks as well around the beach area. There's more than 20 beaches in Sydney alone. So if you like the beach, then you can do some incredible walks, go surfing, swimming, and that type of thing.
Sydney and Newfoundland now have a connection. You know that the Broadway show Come From Away it was on the news last night. They're just restarting the Broadway type shows in Sydney, and the one called Come From Away, which was all about 9/11 in Gander, is restarting in Sydney, according to what I saw on the news and the broadcast and so on.
Amazing. I didn't see Come From Away when it was in Toronto, but I certainly want to see it when the shows start back up here again.
Yeah.
So just going a little further afield, so there's two other locations I'm going to touch on. Sydney's in New South Wales, that's the state. So the Blue Mountains is, I guess, our version of the Grand Canyon, and it's 2 hours west of Sydney. So you can see in these pictures, it's absolutely spectacular. You can do some incredible bushwalking there. It's very scenic. It's cute little country towns along the way that you can visit and have some high tea and things of that nature. But The sunrise and sunsets here are absolutely spectacular. So you can do a day trip here out to the Blue Mountains, or you can overnight. They have some beautiful accommodations up there. Now, look, I love my wine. So Australia is definitely known for its wine. We have many vineyards throughout the country. But in New South Wales, there's one called the Hunter Valley. It's north of Sydney. Once again, it's 2 hours. And I would highly recommend at least one vineyard when you're in Australia. And when you're there, wine tasting is free. When I came to Canada and I had to pay to taste wine, I was shocked. So it's a really great thing to do, and you can have a beautiful lunch in the vineyards and things like that. So now I think we'll move north. So we've just touched on Sydney and some of the major highlights there. So now we're going to go into Queensland, which is the states that borders New South Wales. And this is where you're going to find Australia Zoo. That's Steve Irwin's daughter. So I'm sure you remember the crocodile hunter, and his famous zoo is in Queensland in the Sunshine Coast. Now, the great thing about this zoo is it's very different to any other zoo that I've ever been to. You can have a lot of interactions with the animals. So this is where you can hug a koala. Now, here's a fun fact for you, Derek. You can't actually hug a koala anywhere in Australia except Queensland. So if you want a true koala encounter, you need to make sure you do that in Queensland if you want to get a hug from these little cute guys. So Australia Zoo does do that, and they do have a lot of interactions with the crocodiles as well, which is pretty cool to watch.
So with this interaction with the koalas, because my understanding, they all look nice and cuddly and so on, but generally, in the wild, they are wild, so they can be dangerous. Is that right?
Look, koalas not so much. Kangaroos, yes, they can be in the wild, but koalas are. My parents have one in their front yard, believe it or not. And when we come to visit, it sometimes comes down the tree, and we can pat it. So of course, anything's wild. It could slightly be dangerous, but I would never be afraid to hug a koala or walk up to one in the wild, because they're pretty much drunk 90% of the time because of their eucalyptus leaves, and they're always asleep. So they're very docile, but they're beautiful creatures.
I remember seeing some of it when being rescued during the fires last year, and how people were able to come up to them and all that. But I hear people ask that question with regard to, the safety of being around them and that kind of stuff, with because they do have big claws and that kind of stuff on them, is my understanding. So it was kind of a curious question.
Yeah, and look, it's a fair question, but in all honesty, as you would have probably seen with those fires last year, they are very good with humans, and they were quite happy to come up to the humans. So I would never be scared. There's a few other animals maybe you should be scared of, but not the koala.
Okay.
So now we're in the Sunshine Coast. This is known, as I said, for Australia Zoo, and just beautiful stretches of beaches that go as far as the eye can see. As you can see in this particular picture, you can't even see a human on this particular beach. So that's what you're going to get up there. It's where a lot of Australians go go themselves to vacate. What's the word? For a vacation. So there is a lot of different tourist attractions up there as well that you can do. So now we've gone a little bit more north, and we're going to go to the Great Barrier Reef. You can't go to Australia without visiting one of the natural wonders of the world. This place is spectacular. The water does look like this, and it is nice and warm all year round, so you don't need to wear a wetsuit. And this is a pontoon that's located out in the middle of the reef. It takes roughly 2 hours to get there. That's from Cairns, which is the mainland, or you can stay at many of the islands that are on the Great Barrier Reef. They have some great accommodation out there. So you take a day trip out there, and you can, as I said, you can snorkel or scuba dive. I've done both, and they're both spectacular. You can go to submarine, which is this one here. They have lunch and drinks and food out there and so forth, and then they take you back at the end of the day. So you spend probably about 6 hours out there. But you can also now sleep out there overnight. They've got a new experience they launched last year. So if you want to sleep out on the reef, you can actually do that now.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. So this just shows you some of those islands. So I guess this would be our version of the Caribbean, maybe. But no all-inclusives. That doesn't really exist in Australia. So these are the different islands and what the resorts look like. You've got that turquoise water, that white sand, and there's actually a very famous beach called Whitehaven Beach out here. And I've never seen sand so white in my entire life. So if you have some time, I'd highly recommend going out to one of the islands and spending some time there for some R&R. I'm ready to go now. What do you say?
Looks very inviting.
It does, doesn't it? So another thing, we're back onto Cairns, which is the main gateway to the Great Barrier Reef. It's also good in Cairns because they have the Daintree and Cape Tribulation. So they've got all these beautiful rainforests. Not only that, they've also got a lot of Indigenous population. So if you're wanting to do that type of experience, which I really, truly would recommend when you're in Australia, you can do some of that here as well. So now we've done the city, we've done the reef. Now I'm going to take you to the rock. Now, some of you might think, why would I go to a rock? Why would I fly 4 hours just to see a rock? And look, I kind of thought the same thing until I did it. And it's pretty incredible because you fly over and there is nothing for hours. And then all of a sudden, this amazing rock you can see from your plane. And there's really nothing out there except the rock and a few different properties. And you can do some really amazing experiences. And so you can hike around the base. You can't climb the rock anymore because of the Indigenous population. So it's a sacred site. So you can't climb it, but you can go around it. And one of my favorite things to do is the Sounds of Silence dinner. So you get there about 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and they give you a beer, a glass of wine, or another drink, and some canapes. And then they have an Aboriginal come and pay a didgeridoo as the sun sets behind the rock. And then they serve you a beautiful meal. And then it's followed by someone that comes out and talks about an astronomer. And he talks about the constellation in the sky. And I can tell you, I have never seen stars like I have seen in Uluru before. So if you get out to the rock, you need to do this experience. It's something you'll remember forever. And then finally, I'm going to add Melbourne in as my final city. And the reason being is most people do add this on. So even though I talked about that golden triangle, so really it's time permitting, depending if you can, Melbourne's a really cool city because it has a lot of culture, a lot of dining options, and it's just very different to what Sydney has to offer. So you're going to get your art galleries and things of that nature. So these pictures will kind of show you what it looks like. There's a lot of little nooks and crannies where you can find really unique coffee shops and things like that. So it's all about the art, food and coffee culture there. So if you can get down to Melbourne, I would definitely try and add that on. And the great thing with a lot of airfares is they let you fly into Sydney, but then out of Melbourne. So you don't have to worry about flying back up to Sydney. And another little cute extension is Phillip Island. So that's just off Melbourne, and that's where you can see the fairy penguins and some other different wildlife that's in Australia. So that's my kind of bit of an overview for some of the highlights of things to do when you go to Australia.
How the rock, I think, is part of what they call the Outback. Is that
correct?
Yeah. And do you offer like excursions or overnights and specific itineraries for the Outback?
We certainly do. So obviously I only just touched on the rock, but there's some beautiful places in the Outback. There's Northern Territory, there's the Kimberley region, and you would have seen that at the very beginning. There's quite those dramatic rock formations and things of that nature. So yes, we can do itineraries anywhere from overnighting to 2 to 3 weeks. It really just depends how much time you have and what you want to do when you're there.
I know over the years, some of the things that Goway have offered is kind of like a camping drive type of itinerary. Can you just give us a little idea of what kind of stuff that includes, so that if you're adventurous and want to head out on your own, but what kind of supports are also there for you if you do that?
Absolutely. So we do a lot of self-drive vacations. They can either be where you have a car and then we organise accommodations throughout the way, or you could do a motor van. So we have either option. The great part about these self-drive itineraries is we give you a comprehensive itinerary. So we tell you how long the driving distance is between point A and point B, what to see along the way. And usually with these itineraries, it's only a couple of hours of driving per day. And then little points that you should stop off along the way. And then finally, whether you want accommodation or whether we organise some, we call them caravan parks in Australia, which would be similar to your RV parks here. And they're very well equipped back home as well. So we definitely help guide you along the way and provide you that full comprehensive itinerary. And I can tell you, as an Aussie girl, it was much harder to drive over here in your freeways than it is to drive. I was quite shocked at Toronto. I don't know if anyone on this call has been on the 401 before, which is the freeway when you get out of Toronto Airport. And that was quite scary for a little Aussie that's used to 2 lanes.
And you drive in Australia, you do the left-hand driving?
We certainly do. Yeah, we do. So it was interesting coming here and going to 12 lanes and driving on the wrong side. But within 15 minutes, I'd say you get the hang of it. That's for sure.
The Australia's, I mean, you have a long flight to get there. What are some of your suggestions for people who are not real keen on some of those long flights, as far as, is there things that you can do to, I guess, break that up before they get there, to give it a little bit, instead of being on the plane for 36 hours or 18 hours or?
Absolutely. So there's many stopover options. So you can stop in Hawaii, Tahiti, Fiji, along the way. For me personally, when I get to the West Coast, so when you're in LA, San Francisco, Vancouver, whatever it may be, and you fly from there, they now do direct flights from Dallas and Chicago, believe it or not. Those particular aircraft that they use are the best in the world because it is true long haul. So a lot of the time those flights leave in the evening. So you're looking at about 10 p.m. or so, and then they arrive into Australia at 6 a.m. So what you typically do is you hop on the plane, have a meal, watch a movie, and then you're asleep and you wake up in Australia. So yes, I appreciate, and trust me, I've done that flight many a times from Toronto. Once you hit on that long haul, the one that takes you directly there, because you're on such a nice aircraft that's really equipped for these long haul journeys, it's not so bad. I actually prefer to get on that than to do the stopovers on the way and have a smaller plane. But obviously it's completely up to your client what they'd like to do. And there's many different options. There's not just economy, they have economy plus, business class, first class. So there's a variety of different budgets there and so forth.
Okay, sounds good. I guess I know we're talking Australia, but given that we're going to be in that area of the world, there are options also to be able to do a package that also includes New Zealand.
Absolutely. Now, this is my recommendation to people. Imagine if someone came to you and said they want to do Canada and the USA in one itinerary. You would probably tell them you would probably need a couple of months, realistically, to do it right. So I would say no less than 2 weeks in Australia if you want to do it properly and feel like you've experienced it, and pretty much the same in New Zealand as well. Now, yes, you can absolutely do a stopover in Auckland. You can fly Air New Zealand and do a few nights, but I don't think you would do it justice, to be honest with you, and you'd just be too hungry that you'd want to come back for more. So if you have the time, absolutely, you could do an Air New Zealand and do both countries, but I would recommend at least a month for that. Otherwise, a minimum of 2, if not 3 weeks per country.
Okay. So, yeah, 28 plus days.
Yeah, if you want to do it right, and I think the best example is trying to fit Canada and the USA in one itinerary. It's very difficult to do.
Yeah, I know. I mean, people come to Newfoundland thinking that you can do Newfoundland in a day and a half, but it's not going to happen type of thing. So
Yeah. You can do it, but you'll miss a lot.
you'll miss so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think this a great overview of Australia has got me eager again to want to be going down there and experiencing what Australians have to offer. And hopefully, as soon as the world comes back to whatever the new normal is going to be, and those big metal crafts get back up in the air and start bringing people around, people will be interested in going down to Australia, and I hope at some point to be able to get more people down there. So if anyone is interested, that's what we're here for. But again, as I said at the beginning, this is all about information right now, and allowing people to dream the dream of travel, and hopefully people will look forward to that day. And hopefully it will be sometime soon. Please God, it will be in at least 2022 for sure.
Yeah, and look, the reports we're hearing currently from Australia are that, and look, this is just perhaps happening. I can't guarantee anything, but the government is saying that if you're vaccinated, because there will be a high chance you will need to be vaccinated to get into Australia, that they will let people in. So they're at the moment they're just monitoring the countries and so forth, but we anticipate it could happen as early as the fall this year, that the borders will start to open up, but we're very confident it will for 2022. So one thing if I can just give a little sales pitch and let everyone know that we are booking up for 2022 quite fast. So if you do want to go down under, definitely have a conversation with Derek and start putting some plans in place.
All right. Well, thank you, Renee. And thank you, everyone, for viewing today. I just want to let you know next week we'll be back on again at 3 o'clock on Thursday, 3 o'clock Newfoundland time. And our guest next week will be from a publication called PAX News. They write about travel and what's happening with the world right now. So we'll have someone on from PAX News to give an overview of what they've seen happening in the world and in the world of travel, and what they are hearing about when people can get back and take those dreams even further. So again, thank you very much for being part of the show. It's been great having you, and we look forward to seeing Australia and being part of the Australia experience. So good afternoon, everyone. Have a great afternoon.